Good morning. All right, this is an odd arrangement here. Here, we'll just, I don't know. My name is Shelley Negrani, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Good morning. On behalf of our speaker, Dave Krober, our music director, Alex Peach, our director of religious exploration, Lexi Tagney, the ushers and greeters, and the team that makes live streaming possible, I welcome you to Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North, which we lovingly call UUMAN. UUMAN is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are a liberal faith community. Many of us come here because here we have the opportunity to engage in an open-minded search for truth and for purpose, being mindful of the love we hold for one another and for the world in which we live. If you are visiting us for the first time, it would be good if you could stand. If you're comfortable, stand and introduce yourself and where you're from. Tell us where you're from so that we can worship together as acquaintances. Do we have any visitors to my left? Jerry was your first name? From Fresno, California. Thank you for being with us this morning. Any visitors on my right? Okay. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. We invite you to join us this morning after service. We're going to have a sweet and savory swap and holiday party in Fellowship Hall after the service today. And even if you didn't bring anything to swap, please join us and take things home with you so that those of us who did bring something don't end up, 5 pounds heavier tomorrow. We have, in the order of service, it says that eating to extinction will be after the service today, but it has been changed and rescheduled to February 12th and February 19th, because it just didn't make sense to eat cookies in one room and talk about eating to extinction in the other. So please join us at the party today. For our call to worship today, I'm going to be reminding us of the sources of wisdom and knowledge in Unitarian Universalism. There are 6 sources our congregations affirm and promote. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. And spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Will you light the chalice? Please join with me as we light our chalice. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of judgment, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. Please stand as you are willing and able and join in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Alex will play it through one time to prepare us. So now is the time in the service when the ties that bind us together are spoken aloud. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share with this congregation, please come forward, tell us your name, drop a pebble in the bowl, and speak into the microphone.
Abby, will you say hi?
Hi.
I would like to introduce you to our adopted child. John Albert Telford. We had a final court date on Tuesday, and there's a little bit of state paperwork that still has to be done to officially change the name, but we are done with the system, and this is our child. So thank you very much. Please say thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Wait, Michael.
Can you blue that pebble in the water? This is your moment.
And thank you for everyone's support this whole journey. We've been fostering for 5 years, so it means a lot to us that you've all been there for it. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. I'm sad because the day before yesterday, our hamster Ellie died. But I forget it. Also, I'm excited because next Saturday I have a debate tournament.
It's a hard act to follow. I'm Lexi Tagney Brown, and if you don't know, this is my husband, Hayden.
Hello.
And we are excited to announce that we are expecting a baby next summer.
It's gonna be good, y'all. Honorary grandparents everywhere.
You're all invited to the baby shower.
I'll drop this final pebble for those joys and sorrows left unspoken. Let us hold one another in our hearts until we are together again. The reading this morning is from the book of Matthew. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Good morning. Get set up here. Maybe I should wear my wreath. Actually, I did. Yeah, so today is the second Sunday in Advent. It's the beginning of the Christian liturgical year, and it's the season where we prepare for Christmas, which is the celebration of the birth of Jesus. So for Christians, this is the incarnation. It's the coming of God into the world in human form to bring salvation. The religious significance of the holiday often gets lost in the commercial aspects that we celebrate today. But I thought it would be a good opportunity just to take a moment and look at one of Jesus' most profound messages, the Sermon on the Mount. It's a radical message. It's a call to live differently, and I want to explore how that ties into our Unitarian Universalist principles. Over the years, I've taught this passage multiple times as a Baptist Sunday school teacher, often taking 8 or 10 weeks to work my whole way through the Sermon on the Mount. This is the first time that I've really come back and looked at it and examined it as a UU. And again, I find that it's a powerful message that can resonate with us and impact the way we live today. So the Sermon on the Mount is the Bible's really first major discourse that we see from Jesus. It starts in chapter 5 after Matthew has gone through the birth narrative, the baptism by John in the River Jordan, the temptation by Jesus in the desert, and Jesus calls his closest disciples. This is where we see many of the powerful thematic elements and sayings that we often associate with Christianity. It's where we get things such as the meek inheriting the earth, being salt and light in the world, the Lord's Prayer, turning the other cheek, the Golden Rule, and many others. Matthew's recounting is most likely a composite sermon. It's unlikely that we actually had Jesus going up on top of a hill and delivering, the next 3 chapters that we see in the Bible. In Luke's gospel, which is later on in the New Testament, we see many of these same teachings from Jesus, but they're scattered out throughout multiple occurrences. So in Matthew, he has Jesus beginning his public ministry in a region of Israel called Galilee. It's in the north. And he's teaching and healing and issuing a call to people to repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He's drawing great crowds from the surrounding area, as well as interest from Jerusalem, which is the religious and political capital of Judea in the south. While he's enormously popular with the common people, he's running into opposition from the establishment, both political and religious, because he's disrupting the status quo. His primary theme in the 3 years of public teaching is the imminent coming of what Jesus calls the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. These 2 phrases are used interchangeably in the Bible. They show up over 60 times in the Gospels, which are the different accounts that we have of Jesus' life. Jesus refers to the kingdom of heaven twice in the Beatitudes that Shelley just read to you, and several more times during his sermon. So I think it's important to take just a minute to talk about how we should understand this concept of the kingdom of heaven. Over the centuries, many Christian theologians have weighed in on whether this kingdom that Jesus is talking about is temporal or spiritual, whether it's the present or the future, whether it's political or religious. It's made more difficult by the fact that Jesus never actually explicitly defines what he means by the kingdom. Instead, he uses similes, parables, and different abstractions that provoke his listeners to think more deeply about the values, behavior, hierarchy, and economy of a world where people live under the rule and reign of God. Jesus appears to be describing what it looks like to live in total alignment with God, with others, and with the universe. It's not a political state or a physical domain, but more of a spiritual condition and mindset. It's also worth noting that this kingdom is not only about the afterlife, as our common usage of heaven today might imply. Jesus' kingdom very much includes the present as well. Even the phrase eternal life, which in the Greek is aionia zoe, is more accurately translated as life of the ages. So when Jesus is describing the kingdom of heaven and eternal life, I see him painting a picture of what it looks like to be fully human, living in harmony in a just and balanced world. So Jesus begins this sermon with 9 statements that begin with blessed are. In the Greek, which is the primary language of the New Testament, the word is makarios, which means fortunate, prosperous, or happy. These are good things. They can also be read as, you're really lucky when the following thing happens. We get the name Beatitudes from the Latin word beatitudo, which means a condition or statement of blessedness. So for first century Jews, which was the primary audience that Jesus was talking to, being blessed was usually determined by your health, your wealth, good fortune, and social standing. This was a sign that God was pleased with you. Bad things, if they happened in your life, were almost certainly an indicator that you or your parents had sinned or offended God in some way. So each beatitude begins with "you're blessed when," followed by a descriptive condition, then a benefit or a promise. It's a tidy if-then format, and it's a helpful formula for us to mindfully apply when we find ourselves searching for how to respond to adversity or when we struggle with what it looks like to be good in a certain circumstance. So these are the attributes that Jesus says we should aspire to, that we should desire, and why they matter. And I'm going to use the traditional translation that you heard in this reading from Shelley, along with a contemporary paraphrase from The Message, which was written by Eugene Peterson in the 90s in an attempt to kind of bring the language of the Bible into a more contemporary idiom. So Jesus begins with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And in The Message, "You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule." Jesus says you're blessed when you're lacking, when you're destitute, when you're broken, when you're hopeless, when you don't know where to turn, when you're humbled, when you're stripped of ego, and maybe even identity. It's here at the bottom that you're able to surrender self and experience the fullness of God, the kingdom of heaven. It's a powerful encouragement and source of hope to a politically occupied and economically oppressed people. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And in The Message, you're blessed when you feel lost, when you feel that you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. So sorrow, weeping, lamenting, grief strips away the illusion that you are in control. It is at these times of loss, when you feel that you cannot take another step forward, that you find spiritual comfort. It may come through the love of others, through nature, or through something deep and unnameable inside of you. In Luke's version, he says that mourners shall laugh. So there is this promise that somehow joy will return to life. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And in The Message, you're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment that you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. This word meekness, meekness, is often associated with timidity or weakness or mildness. But the usage in the Bible is really far different than that. It's a humble security. It's a gentleness of spirit that looks more like restrained strength or power under control than helplessness. Later on in Matthew, Jesus describes himself as meek when he urges his weary and burdened followers to yoke themselves to him so that he may give them rest. The promise is that this gentle mindset is what will ultimately inherit the earth. It gives hope that in the long run, humility will prevail over arrogance. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And in The Message, you're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal that you'll ever eat. So what do you have a burning desire for? Is it material possessions, or is it wholeness, justice, and goodness? Jesus uses physical hunger and physical thirst to evoke a powerful image of longing, of yearning, of passionately desiring moral integrity and justice. In the economy of the kingdom of heaven, this gnawing hunger will be satisfied. In other Gospels, Jesus refers to himself as living water and as bread of life. So he further builds upon this metaphor that only spiritual pursuits can truly satisfy our deep desire for wholeness. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And in the message, you're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourself being cared for. So you're blessed when you're compassionate, tender-hearted, forgiving. Mercy is the withholding of a consequence due. It's the flip side of the coin from grace, which is the giving or receiving of a benefit not earned. We need both in life. It's an others-focused approach. It's yielding my rights or my entitlement to avenge a wrong in service of seeking healing and wholeness of others. Jesus promises that when you live mercifully, you'll receive mercy in return. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Or you're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart, put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. The purity here is not a holier-than-thou posture. It's not something that's so focused, exclusively on sexual mores. It's more of a childlike innocence and trust, drawing from a deep reservoir of inner spiritual strength. And it's here that we encounter God. In his letter to the church in Philippi, the evangelist Paul encourages Christians to live this out. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. The things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And in the message, you're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. This is especially meaningful for our contentious world today and in this week. It's a call to be a reconciler, restoring harmony in relationships in the world at large. There's also an internal dimension. You must be at peace with yourself before you can be at peace with others. Jesus says that when you do this, it's what truly marks you as a son or daughter of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And in the message, you're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. When Jesus talks about persecution here, this is a persistence or a perseverance under duress when you're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, in our current climate, there's a lot of people claiming that they are persecuted when they cling to hateful or exclusionary beliefs or behaviors, which is really a shallow diminishing of the true meaning of the word. We need to be careful with the word righteousness. It's really about moral integrity, not about moral superiority. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. The Message translation really expands this with, not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for though they don't like it, I do, and all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. I think John Lewis was channeling this in 2020 when he spoke at the 55th anniversary of Selma's Bloody Sunday. Lewis said, "Speak up, speak out, get in the way. Get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America." So standing for justice, for economic, social, environmental justice, is threatening to many people. Be prepared to be attacked, but know that ultimately there is reward. It may not come in the material sense. It may come through the peace of knowing that you have done the right thing, that future generations will benefit from the boldness of your stance and of the prophets or truth seekers and truth speakers who came before you, who stood at the edge of the inside to critique power structures and the status quo. So there we have it, these 9 blessings that come when we live fully under the rule and reign of God. And when I say God here, it's God however we define it. It's not just the Judeo-Christian God. It's that inner peace, that inner knowledge that I am connected spiritually to others and to the universe. It's a call to live boldly yet unselfishly, leaving our egos behind. They're simultaneously both challenging and comforting. They resonate for our times, and I see them aligning extremely well with our UU principles. A final thought on the Beatitudes. They're essentially the inverse of character traits that often get celebrated in our culture. 75 years ago, Christian writer A.W. Tozer did a masterful job of contrasting these in his essay of meekness and rest from his book, The Pursuit of God. And I think they still ring true today. He's quoting Tozer here. A fairly accurate description of the human race might be furnished one unacquainted with it by taking the Beatitudes, turning them wrong side out and saying, here is your human race. For the exact opposite of the virtues in the Beatitudes are the very qualities which distinguish human life and conduct. In the world of men, we find nothing approaching the virtues of which Jesus spoke in the opening words of the famous Sermon on the Mount. Instead of poverty of spirit, we find the rankest kind of pride. Instead of mourners, we find pleasure seekers. Instead of meekness, arrogance. Instead of hunger after righteousness, we hear men saying, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing. Instead of mercy, we find cruelty. Instead of purity of heart, we find corrupt imaginings. Instead of peacemakers, we have men quarrelsome and resentful. Instead of rejoicing in mistreatment, we find them fighting back with every weapon at their command. Of this kind of stuff, civilized society is composed. The Beatitudes are a call for us to live counterculturally, and I think it's a solid foundation for us to build upon. Thanks.
Nurture our spirit, strive for justice, transform the world. This is the mission of UUMAN. And we achieve this mission through our contributions of our time, our talents, and our treasure. The offering will now be received. For the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love in our lives and in the world, we give thanks. Please stand as you are willing and able and join in singing hymn number 352, Find a Stillness. And again, Alex will play it through one time first. Please join me in reading in unison our extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
So I encourage us that we all go out from here today and embrace Beatitude living, how we can go and bring hope and healing to a world that desperately needs the love of a faith community like UU. Nurture our spirits, strive for justice, and transform the world. Go in peace.